Good morning, everybody. Honorable ministers, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure and privilege for me to welcome you to this ministerial roundtable. Let me from the outset express my profound condolences to the people of Turkey and Thailand. On Sunday this week, a 7.2 earthquake struck Turkey, causing hundreds of dead, injuring many others, and causing a lot of destruction in terms of property and infrastructure. Over 100 aftershocks were recorded the same day. On the other hand, after 3 months of rainfall and flooding, over 350 people have died in the northern and central parts of the southern East Thailand. And this morning, again, we get news that this flood will maybe continued in the coming today or tomorrow. Some 110,000 people have been evacuated from their homes since the monsoon began in August, and the disaster is not yet over. It is really my hope that normalcy return in this place as early as possible. I would like to request your indulgence for us to stand for 1 minute of silence on the memory of all those who lost their life. Thank you. The situation in Thailand and recent such events around the world have demonstrated that no country is immune to natural disasters. Last year alone, earthquakes, heat waves, floods, volcanoes, and super typhoons, blizzards, landslides, and droughts kill and maim more than 1 million of people in 2010. The deadliest year in more than a generation. The Haitian earthquake, Russian heat wave, and Pakistani flooding were the biggest killers. Deadly quakes also struck Chile, Turkey, China, and Indonesia, to name just a few, in 2010 as one of the most active seismic years in decades. The year 2011 has been no exception. In fact, the year 2011 has already been recorded as the costliest year ever in terms of damages caused by nature. Natural disaster damages in 2011 are 5 times higher than the past 10 years average, and double of 2010 totals of 130 million. Of course, the memories of the March 2011 earthquake and tsunami are still very fresh in our mind. Ladies and gentlemen, having said all this, let me turn to hope messages. We are very fortunate to have a distinguished panel of ministers from all around the world who will share with us views on how we could harness information and communication technologies to detect, predict, monitor, and respond to natural disaster. And how also we can link ICT for emergency telecommunication and sustainable development, because this is what it is about. If you ask me today whether ICT has the ability to save human life, my answer will be a big yes, and yes again. I believe that if we all share experiences, as we are trying to do here today, and combine with strong commitment to transform words into action, we can help save millions of lives across the globe. The timing of this roundtable is good. Our latest statistics report that 1/3 of the world's 7 billion people are now internet users, and 45% of them are under the age of 25. The developing world has, as of today, registered a very high number of mobile cellular subscriptions, accounting for 87% global penetration and 79% penetration in the developing countries. So, universal access is no longer a myth. Let's use it for emergency telecommunication and save lives. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me at this point introduce our panelists. We have for this Ministerial Roundtable, Your Excellency, Mr. Syed Ahmed Khan, Vice Minister of Pakistan. Welcome, Honorable Vice Minister. Your Excellency, Mr. Falashe Pinas, Minister of Suriname. Welcome, Honorable Minister. Your Excellency, Mr. Ruakana Ruganda, Minister of Uganda. Welcome, Honorable Minister. Senator Honorable Arle Gill, Senator and with responsibility of ICT of Grenada. Welcome, Senator, Honorable. Mrs. Bernadette Lowes, Secretary General of Caribbean Telecommunication Union. Welcome, Bernadette. And welcome to all the panelists and all the participants, all the ministers around this table, and all the participants for getting together this morning to think about what can strike each of us at any moment. I would like to start by getting some insight from the panelists. My intention is not to have a divided room where one side are panelists, and the other side are those who are questioning. My intention is to make this session as interactive as possible. So please feel free to make your point from the room and answer also to questions from the room. So I'll start by questions, few questions, just to start, to the panelists. What do you see as the vital priorities in emergency preparedness and planning? How does disaster response and mitigation planning apply to your country? What sort of frameworks do you have in place, and how do this include telecommunication and ICTs? Are you confident enough in the robustness of your national information infrastructure to withstand natural disaster? What are the key messages and priorities you wish to transmit to IT management and to the world on this vital issue? This is few questions. I will start by the panelists and go to the room so we can exchange on these issues that are very important. Again, I would like to request your indulgence to be as short as possible. 1 hour and a half is never enough to solve this kind of problem, but I would like to request your indulgence to be as short as possible in your intervention, the panelists and the room also, to give enough room for us to interact as much as possible. Having said that, I would like to start in the same order. Your Excellency, Mr. Saeed Ahmed Khan, do you have any insight to share with us?
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Brahma Sanu, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really glad and grateful to all of you to giving me this opportunity to speak at this August forum on such an important and crucial topic, which is affecting our daily lives these days. We all know the global warming and extreme weather conditions in recent years have posed a greater challenge to not only our climate, but our lives as well. As a World Bank report estimates around more than 82,000 people die every year of natural calamities throughout the world. Pakistan has witnessed 3 major disasters during the last 6 years. 2005, we have a very severe earthquake, which took the lives of more than 73,000 people. Around 200,000 people were injured, and thousands of houses were destroyed. Then we had, in 2010, a super flood, which displaced more than 20 million people from north to south, the spread of the country. This year, we again had heavy downpour, heavy monsoon, unprecedented monsoon, which has displaced around 8 million people in one of the most important provinces of Pakistan. Unfortunately, the calamities, natural calamities and disasters are coming now in quick succession, not only in Pakistan, but in recent days, our brother country, Turkey, has witnessed a severe earthquake. All these things have, I think, compelled all the governments and international organizations now to sit together and think over that there's much to do. And not only that governments, but all international organizations have to join hands and go together to find out a solution for that. What solution could be? A solution which can mitigate the suffering of the people, which can prepare us to reduce the impact of the calamity. Of course, a natural calamity is a natural calamity. A disaster is a disaster. There could be somewhere man-made disaster as well. But we have to sit together. We believe, and I'm sure, that ICTs provide an essential solution for preparedness of emergencies and disasters. We have witnessed during the earthquake of 2005 that as soon as the earthquake struck, the most important infrastructure which was recreated was of ICTs, that is the telecommunication towers, the telecommunication system, much more before than the roads infrastructure and other infrastructure was created. We all know that ICTs have all essential ingredients which can provide a solution. It can give the government's tool to prepare, to be ready to face any calamity in future. ICTs have also an important role to play, not only in preparedness, but also to make the people aware of what to do when there is an emergency, how to react, how to respond to an emergency situation. We believe that we have to work at two levels. One, at regional level, to coordinate and collaborate, and the other at a global level. Because at global, the disasters and calamities, they now affect the global, at global level, not only a country, because these affect the health of the people, these affect the economy of the people, the natural calamities affect the GDP, it affects the Millennium Development Goals, it affects the health of the people. So it is now a global phenomenon, not specific to one country or regional. But we have to find out solutions at two levels, that is at regional level and at global level, and to coordinate. The heartening factor is that as soon as some calamity is struck any country, there are extraordinary stories of nations coming together, helping each other, and feeling that we are part of one globe, we're part of the one community, we're part of one world. So the question raised today are very important one. I think during discussion, we'll be having an interactive communication to develop a consensus. And in my view, we have to have some standing operating procedures, SOPs, and guidelines to be given under an ITU and United Nations for all countries to follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'm sorry, when I'm talking about emergency telecommunication, I can be sometimes very emotional. My emotion let me overlook one of the panelists, Mr. Mohamed Al-Ghanim, the Director General of Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of the United Arab Emirates, assuming at the same time the role of minister. Thank you very much and welcome. I also forgot to introduce my colleague here, Cosmas Zavazava, who is the chief of the department in charge of emergency telecommunication, among others. I myself, Brahima Sanu, am the director of BDT. I am your humble moderator for today. So I would like now to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Felice Pinas, Minister of Suriname. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Director BDT, honorable ministers and delegates to this auspicious roundtable. It is for me a great honor to get answer on the questions and to share some thoughts with you on the subject of emergency telecommunications linked to disaster preparedness. When disaster hit, the primary and most important objectives is saving lives. But having done so, the people must be taken to a safe place where they can start to recover and prepare for picking up their lives again. Every step of this process has to be prepared in advance, since speed to act is of utmost importance to save as many lives as possible. Of course, this means that hospitals, roads, transport facilities, emergency communications, food and shelter have to be supplied in addition to normal levels of care in the communities. Since we need to look at the specific issues of ICT and emergency telecommunications, I will not dwell too much on all those other logistical aspects. ICT is, of course, a means of taking stock and keeping records of all available information of districts and counties. Also, historical data of past events and special weather conditions are collected. We learn by taking stock of all incidents and the total environmental impact. I must say that we are not as unfortunate in Suriname as in some other places where year upon year countries are hit by disasters. We have some trouble with heavy rains and flooding. In 2006, we were confronted with a flood which has disastrous effects on the villages. The fact is that the majority of the villages in our interior are situated near the riverbank. This because the river plays a crucial role in the daily lives in the communities. No emergency plan was available at that time. Our problem, therefore, was to evacuate the people to higher ground, and the logistics to feed them and to supply medical care was lacked. We learned from our shortcomings, and the National Disaster Coordination Center, NCCR, was established. The NCCR is responsible to supply help in all unfortunate events, therefore also in case of all for example, major traffic accidents or plane crashes. The emergency telecommunications plan is covered by having satellite phones, standby, also a two-way radio system, standby. We have 3 mobile service providers in Suriname. And since all of the towers are installed in high places, we expect communication to be unaffected by flooding. We plan to build a data storage facility to keep our information safe. In the past, information was lost because of damage of paper records by flooding or fire. In this way, valuable information was lost. The facility will allow us to protect our information and safeguard it against natural as well as man-made disasters. At the same time, having these information online, we will allow us to coordinate with international organizations in analyzing of environmental developments. Vital priorities in emergency preparedness and planning are bundling and coordination of all efforts. Through bundling and coordination, the efforts will be more effective, and this way the financial cost can be shared. We have noticed that the environmental disasters are rising and that the international impact of these events is greatly increased. Therefore, it needs to be studied internationally. We have to make the efforts of collecting all the data from our country and try to understand how to be forewarned to take the right measures to protect our people. ICTs will certainly allow us to improve this. We would welcome a more effective and visible presence of ITU in the Caribbean region when dealing with disasters. An early warning monitoring system is one option which can be worked out. Let's join all efforts and work together towards a sound and strong emergency plan that with the use of ITC will minimize the headache and loss of lives and property during emergency situations or disaster. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. It's now my great pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Ruakana Ruganda, Minister of Uganda. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Uganda, like many other countries, has been experiencing emergencies, landslides, and floods. And this has been the case for the last 5 years. And the most severe landslides were in 2007, when we lost 300 lives and property worth millions and millions of Uganda shillings. And these landslides and floods disrupted communication systems in the areas affected and further disrupted provision of relief. And because of that, the affected people suffered even more because of disruption in communication. Let me salute ITU, because ITU came in and provided satellite telephone systems, and this helped in tackling the emergencies that we had. And with the support of ITU, we have now embarked on establishing an early warning system, and we do expect that this system will enable us to confront emergencies in the future when they come, and we will be more prepared to deal with them. There has been a regional approach and regional effort in East Africa and the East African community. We have the telephone companies involved in this, and we have the support of GSM Association. This international collaboration and regional collaboration, we think, is important in tackling these emergencies. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, I want to highlight from our experience the great importance of a coordinated response when there is an emergency, especially led by government with involvement of relief agencies, communication companies, and medical teams. That early response, coordinated response, has saved many lives, and I commend it to other colleagues and other countries. The final comment is that international collaboration, sharing of experiences will further equip us to be more prepared to deal with emergencies. And I believe because of the climate change, these emergencies are becoming more frequent, more disastrous, and we globally should be more prepared to deal with even more serious natural disasters, floods, landslides, and the like. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. It is now my pleasure to call upon Excellency Mr. Mohamed Al-Ghanim to give us his insight on the subject. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just wanted to start by saying that the ITU for the past at least 10 years has been working very hard to put a framework on emergency communications. Also, on the radio communication sector, they've been trying to harmonize spectrum for emergency communications. However, many countries were slow in picking up such harmonization, as well as on putting a framework for emergency communications. We have started in the UAE over the past years to put a sector-specific emergency plan. And this sector-specific emergency plan today is on our website, the organization website, the TRA website, the regulatory authority website is available for all. However, Chairman and distinguished delegates, we now believe, and of course drills is gonna have, we will conduct drills, and this is gonna cover sea disasters, land disasters. We believe now we are living in an area or in an era that an emergency in one country does not affect that country only, but it affects the entire world. This is where we think it's important that collaboration is extremely important in helping other countries on the time of disasters. We have seen that. We have seen that in Haiti, we have seen that in Pakistan, we have seen that in many countries. Countries tend to help the other countries when it happens to emergency communications. However, when the help starts to happen, what countries start to find out is coordination on the time of emergency is vital in order to reach and bring food or shelter to the people who are affected. And this is where, at least on a regional level, there has to be harmonization on emergency plans and frequency bands and communication systems during emergency that need to be compatible, because when the time of disaster happens, at least countries can bring their systems and can provide help to the people who are really on remote areas and people who are really on a need. And another organization which has concluded its work, another UN organization, last week or actually this week, they were discussing a global emergency plan framework because what happened in Japan, I believe that it might impact the world. What happened in Russia once, it had impacted a bigger region, and so on and so forth. So it's very vital, it's very important that countries, and I'm saying now, since the distinguished delegates here around the table, is that we go from classical way of having a country level emergency plan, which is vital and necessary, to a more harmonized regional / I will call it global framework for emergency and disaster plan, where all countries get together hand in hand and help each other. And during that time, such plan has to be effective, and such plan has to be enacted without the requirement to have a slow hierarchy of approvals in order to move to disaster areas in order to help. My conclusion, Mr. Chairman, is ITU have done a fantastic job over the past years in harmonizing spectrum and putting emergency plans. There are booklets ITU have issued. Then many countries started to come up with their own emergency plans. UAE is one of them, and we have it, and we can share it with all other countries as well. But it's time for us right now to work together on a global basis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's now my pleasure to pass the floor to Senator Honorable Al-Legiel, Senator with responsibility for ICT for Grenada. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Honorable and distinguished ministers of government, other delegates present, good morning. Grenada, of course, is an island in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean is arguably the best place to live. Grenada is the home of the 18-year-old world 400-meter champion, one named Kirani James. And though we live in island paradise, so to speak, we are not spared the ravages of natural disasters. In 2004, Hurricane Ivan ravaged Grenada. 85% or thereabouts of our housing stock was adversely affected. Our parliament building, Supreme Court, our churches, our schools, most were destroyed. 95% of our agricultural crops were destroyed, and Hurricane Ivan resulted in millions and millions of US dollars in damages. In 2005, another hurricane, Hurricane Emily, finished the work that Ivan started. Just in our neighboring islands, last year, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Lucia, they were adversely affected by Hurricane Thomas that destroyed serious infrastructure, work, roads, bridges, damaged a significant part of the agricultural stock, destroyed homes and other national buildings, again, resulting in millions of dollars of damages. Now, for island economies small like ours, and you're talking about Grenada, a population of 100,000, St. Lucia, what, 150,000 or thereabout, one can therefore put in perspective the magnitude of the damage. We're not as large as some of the other countries around this table. And having said that, most persons may even forget that Haiti is a Caribbean island. And when the earthquake struck Haiti, the aftershocks were felt in Jamaica and Cuba in particular, and other Caribbean islands. The Caribbean, ladies and gentlemen, is in the hurricane belt, so to speak, and we are affected almost yearly, basically by hurricanes and earthquakes. In the territorial waters of Grenada, there is an active volcano called Kikamjini. If God forbid, and Kikamjini erupts, it will affect not just Grenada, but St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, and as far as St. Lucia. So those are real realities. Montserrat, don't know how many of you are familiar with Montserrat, but Montserrat has been plagued by a volcano for the last 10 to 15 years or thereabouts that has witnessed the evacuation of more than 50 or 60% of the population. Now, these are Caribbean islands that have been adversely affected by natural disasters. And I want to use this opportunity to extend condolences to the people of Turkey and Thailand who are now experiencing what some of us have experienced in recent years. And as such, it is extremely important for us in the Caribbean to use ICT as much as is possible for predicting and for detecting natural disasters. My colleague from Suriname spoke about the first priority, which is to save lives in event of natural disasters. And we believe that early warning systems would play a significant role in preparing us in the region for these natural disasters which I referred to earlier. We have noticed the advancement of technologies in the ISDBT in Japan and other parts of the world. And we believe that these technologies can be useful to us in the region. We have noticed that India has developed a super weather forecasting computer. And that, again, is another important instrument that can be used to assist the Caribbean in ensuring that we are well prepared in terms of predicting, detecting, and responding to disasters. You see, the thing about disasters is that no one knows when it will strike. And it does not choose the more developed countries or the bigger countries to strike. It strikes at any time, anywhere, any part of the world. And as such, regardless of the size of nations, it is important that every nation must be adequately prepared. I believe that, and we believe that economic development should not be discriminatory in terms of preparing different nations and different states for natural disasters. And we want to urge the ITU, as well as other developed countries around this table, to please share your technology so that we, in the smaller islands, can use that technology to save lives. Grenada, as well as the other Eastern Caribbean countries, we have excellent cellular phone or mobile penetration. And that was a useful tool in our preparedness and our recovery efforts. However, we believe that the use of mobile-based receiver stations and so on in times of hurricane and other natural disasters can go a long way in responding to those natural disasters. In commenting on the question with regards to our robustness, in terms of information infrastructure, we are not satisfied that we are robust sufficiently. And as such, a lot of investment needs to be made to ensure that we can have the latest technological applications to assist our island states in developing that robustness which some of the bigger nations have. In closing, I want to urge the ITU to use its good offices to ensure that the Caribbean and Grenada is assisted in accessing latest technologies with regards to natural disasters. As I said, natural disasters happen at any time, and it does not wait until everyone is prepared. If that was the case, then we would not be discussing this issue this morning. There must be ease of transfer of technology and the relevant development of human resources to ensure that not only that we have the technology, but that we have the human resource, the human capacity to use the technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Senator. Now it is my pleasure to give the floor to Mrs. Bernadette Lewis, Secretary General of Caribbean Telecommunications Union. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bernadette Lewis, as you've heard. I am the Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, an intergovernmental ICT policy organization that represents 20 Caribbean countries. And I'm sure when you hear the word Caribbean, you know, it evokes idyllic images of the region of sun and sand and peace and calm. But as our good minister said from Grenada, and also the minister from Suriname, we are also subject to natural disasters. A significant portion of the Caribbean countries, they were formed by volcanic activity. They reside on the junction of the Caribbean and Atlantic tectonic plates. And as a result, we are susceptible to earthquakes, to volcanic activity, and of course, the ever-present hurricane season from June to November every year. We can expect a visitation from 1 or 2 strangers at least. But my concern has been that in order to effectively respond to these natural disasters, we must have the information that is necessary, and that has to be part of the proprietary process. We must know where our critical infrastructure is, who are the responding agencies, who are going to respond to help us. And I want to draw in an example from the situation both from Tomas, as the minister from Grenada mentioned, and also Irene, a more current hurricane, which happened in August 2011. Irene was 600 miles in diameter. 600 miles covers about 14 independent countries in the Caribbean. And when these hurricanes traverse the region, you have simultaneous activity in a number of islands. Who are going to be the first responders? We cannot even help ourselves. How are we going to help our neighbors? Therefore, I think it is necessary that we build information structures that consist of satellite imagery, the satellite images, databases of where information is, GIS information. These things have to be prepared ahead of time if they're going to be beneficial to us. And the whole issue of repositories, safe repositories for this information, has to be considered. So I want to suggest perhaps cloud computing may be one of the ways, mechanisms by which we store the information, so that the countries who are able to respond have access to this information and can make use of that information in mounting a coordinated, effective response. I think this has been a failing, and I think it is certainly something that we need to work on a lot more, incorporating the GIS systems into our ICT, in our disaster recovery and planning mechanisms. The challenge that we saw in Haiti, the disaster happened, and nobody knew what was required, how to help, where to go first. And these things have to be written into any disaster recovery plan, and the plan has to be updated regularly and exercised, so that when the disaster strikes, people have been working the plan and they can execute the plan. Otherwise, we've seen it in many countries, there's confusion. Well, who did you check? The satellite phones, the batteries are dead, the this, the that. We've seen it. So I think for the first question, Chairman, the whole issue of the vital priorities, it is setting that information infrastructure in place, using the satellite imagery, using the GIS, getting information on where the schools are, the centers which can be used as evacuation centers. All of this, a comprehensive body of information, and that is a starting point. And I'd like to just go back to the standard operating procedure mentioned by my distinguished colleague here from Pakistan. Absolutely necessary. And if we could harmonize these processes across the region, I think we could have a better response for when emergencies and disasters happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. We have got a lot of information together with the emotion that can be attached to it. Now I would like to give the floor to the room for asking questions or commenting or replying to questions that were asked. So now, give the floor to the room. If you take the floor, I would like to request if you could introduce yourself. Honorable Minister of Sierra Leone, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim Asano. Mr. Chairman, for this occasion, I just want to make a few remarks here. For those of us who come from West Africa, and when we talk about disasters, we restrict them sometimes to earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, etc., etc. But for those of us who come from West Africa, we also have the disaster that has to do with locusts. How do we utilize ICT to determine the movement of locusts, who sometimes devastate our agricultural fields? This is a very important component in our fight to address those issues that have to do with the sustainability of our various communities. But having stated that, talking about emergency, Mr. Chairman, I think that we should also look at the speed with which information is disseminated. To us, it's very, very important. Must we also look at the speed with which healthcare and other facilities are mobilized in the event that danger strikes? Then must we also ask ourselves the speed with which food and other things are mobilized? Because those of us who perceive the radio as an instrument for information dissemination have also come to the realization that its usefulness comes only after the act, to disseminate the information that has to do with the disaster itself. So we will want to suggest, I will want to suggest that in as much as it is necessary for us to look at the emergency component that is so vital to save lives, we think that ITU and other very important agencies that have to do with ICT should also take into consideration bringing on board the private sector so that equipment will be developed for the purposes of ensuring that members of the public are informed about the potential of an earthquake or a volcano, etc., etc. I will conclude by stating that the geophysicists did their best, but all they have done is to give us the intellectual information. The oceanographers have done their best, but all they've done is to give us intellectual information. Now we must begin to ask ourselves, how do we utilize this information to ensure that we save the lives of the people? And this is where ICT comes in, and ITU comes in as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I would like to give again the floor to the room. Please come in, ask question, make a comment. Yes, Mr. Ayub.
Dear sir, distinguished speakers, we heard a lot about your experience and and what you are doing and what happens during disasters and mainly natural disasters. But I think we should tackle also the man-made disaster, especially the wars that that happens on some countries or terrorist attacks, for such actions, what kind of emergency has to be taken into what actions has to be taken into consideration? What is the role of the different agencies on the national level or on the regional level? What kind of barriers that has to be considered or released from the regulatory bodies or from the governments in order to fasten the relief in such case of disasters? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a question, comment and question to the audience. Yes, please, Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Director. Mine is yes, a comment and also some questions and even a call through you, the ITU directors, that countries around this table, we are experiencing a number of problems as to what some ministers have also alluded to. And as government, we are also reviewing our policies, and we have macro sector disaster committees, which are looking into all these steps which we need to follow as government. But now, it's a call now through you that we are calling upon the international community to support developing countries, especially in linking ICT and the emergency disaster management, that we've got to help with these developing countries to make sure that we are able to detect speedy response, efficiency, relief, distribution, as what the Minister of Sierra has said. And the cloud computing as a tool of information storing is very important. How can ITU, through you, assist countries that are developing to develop these technologies that are high cost for poor countries, yet we have our own priorities as well. When you are assisting us with the trace centers, it's not an issue of only internet, but we need also to co-opt in some of these technologies that we need to detect the disaster and make sure that we are there and we are above the, ahead of some of these warnings. So it is, we've been talking so long, Mr. Director, and it's time now that you've got to come in and say, what is it that we are supposed to do, that we should not be experiencing some of these? When we have this this infrastructure, and when we put these computers, what is it that we are supposed to do? Why can't we co-opt some of these? Why can't we put some communication, wireless messages that we need to inform our people in the rural areas that this is what is happening? So it's a call through you to our developed countries to help us as developing countries who are around this table. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I heard your call. I heard it so well that I will repeat it in French to make sure everybody got the call. Messieurs et Mesdames, les acteurs du développement, il y a un appel qui est lancé ici pour que chacun de vous puisse aider les pays en développement à mettre les choses en place pour sauver les vies en cas de désastre. I would like to repeat it in Portuguese, but I don't understand. I'd like to come to Spanish. It's a bit more difficult, but I stay here for the continuation of the discussion. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Any other comment? Dear panelists, do you want to react at this point in time on one of the issues raised? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. A colleague from Caribbean Telecommunications Union has raised, I think, the first question. What do you see as the vital priorities in emergency preparedness and planning as the information strategy? That if you have a correct, credible, and concrete information, even only then you can plan. I mean, planning is, pure planning and preparedness is contingent about the availability, timely availability of information, correctness of the information, and credibility of the information. This is the most important element of any strategy. And in our country, we have an information system as well as we have National Disaster Management Authority. We have at provincial level, Provincial Disaster Management Authority. And since in Pakistan, the cellular system, the companies and the mobile, this telecommunication is around 70%, more than 67%, in all important areas and remote areas connected. So from from village level up to the national level, we're all connected through a very credible system. And that's why whenever there is a calamity, for instance, for floods, of course, and for rains, we exactly know that when the rain will fall, how much rain will be there, how many days will be there. And that has really helped us to mitigate the sufferings of the affectees and to relocate them and to provide them health care, medicines, food, the tentage, shelters, etc., etc. So I think this is most important if we have a correct information at very early stage that help us to prepare yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other reaction? Maybe at this point in time, I would like to allow myself to give the floor to Dr. Cosmas Zavazava to tell us very briefly what ITU is doing in this regard. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by saying that we have benefited quite a lot from the contributions made here. The ITU Constitution, and as you well know, ITU has been in existence since 1865. It is the oldest United Nations organization. As in its Article 40 of the Constitution, the words that read, telecommunications shall be used to save lives in the air, on land, and at sea. So the SOS in Morse code format, which was introduced immediately after the establishment of the organization, save our lives, is a clear indication of the seriousness of the matter. But our introduction, or my words, or my contribution should be summarized in the following words. You should remember technology, policy, regulation, and finally, the legal framework. That's basically what it is. The ITU has been working closely with the member states for a very long time. We have three sectors, as you well know. In standards, we set a lot of standards. One of the key standards is the interoperability of telecommunication networks. And another standard that we came up with is preferential treatment of calls. When there is congestion in the network, the window for ordinary social calls closes because of the ITU standard, and then the window widens for emergency calls for humanitarian actors. The other area is the issue of spectrum management. The Radio Communication Bureau has established a database in order to, in a predetermined manner, come up with frequencies that will be used by radio amateurs, by governments, by humanitarian actors, so that you can predefine. The case of Haiti, when we were in Haiti, we had a serious problem of congestion and interference because people were just, in an arbitrary manner, just allocating themselves spectrum. And there was a serious problems with all the people who were there to provide assistance. The legal framework is also of a critical nature because at the international level, we must have a harmonized approach in terms of legislation. And we have what we call the Temporary Convention. And ITU was in the forefront during the negotiation stage of this in 1998. And this came into effect on the 8th of January in 2005. And we encourage those governments that ratified to implement the Temporary Convention because it seeks to break barriers to entry in terms of telecommunications equipment when disasters do strike and the movement of natural persons, those that go through immigration. So we need at national level, through interministerial committees to make sure that everybody knows exactly what the legal framework is that was established. Regulation is a key element. You can have all the technology you want, but if the environment is not enabling, you can do very little. So in terms of licensing operators, the private sector, when they come into the government, into the country, the license must contain a clause that says the network shall be used in the event of a major disaster for public good. And that's a critical element. The issue of spectrum management to make sure that when you allocate frequencies, you set aside key frequencies for disaster management. So ITU established what we call IFCE, which is the ITU framework for cooperation in emergencies. It is made out of 3 pillars. The first pillar is the technology pillar, which brings together all actors that handle technology, and we have got massive technologies in ITU, in our offices, that we use to send out or deploy when disasters do strike. And we use 3 kinds of technologies, I think some of the panelists mentioned. One of the key technology that we use is geographical information system. Your ability to have high-resolution maps before the disaster strikes and another high-resolution map after the disaster is struck without going to the zone which is affected, because you know the demographics and population dispersion in those areas. You can literally know how many people have been affected by the disaster. So coordinating logistics becomes very easy. The second element is Earth observation systems, where we use active and passive sensors in order for us to see how the sea is reacting. Is it rising? Countries like Maldives, Tuvalu, and others who are threatened, probably they will disappear within the next 35 to 45 years. We have to read this rhythm so that we can save human life. E-health and telemedicine is a critical element, and we were in Pakistan, a typical example where we set up clinics in the remote areas, and then junior doctors are trained, and then they can relay X-rays to specialist hospitals, and then there could be an interactive video, and you can diagnose, and then that way you'll be able to save lives. So we do design national emergency telecommunication plans for countries. We develop standard operating procedures for countries. We can define affordable, cheap, and appropriate technologies to deploy for early warning, for response, and also we are involved in the rehabilitation of telecommunication networks when they do get affected or disrupted, especially terrestrial networks. So these are some of the key elements that we are involved in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other comment from the panelists? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been listening to the presentations, and I have one question, if not 2. These are disasters, and disasters normally come uninvited. And you are also doing quite a lot at ITU to try and assist nations in developing and designing the early warning signs and the activities thereafter. But my questions are, is there an effort to make sure that the countries that are susceptible to these disasters collaborate? Because I am hearing nations must prepare daily disaster warning, you know, and even after disaster, all those things are focused at one nation. Is there an effort to say the Caribbean countries have a collaborative strategy which they work on, irrespective of their differences in other areas, but specifically focusing on disaster? We also had something from Pakistan and its neighbors. Do they have something of that nature? I think it's something which hasn't come out very, very clearly. The individual nation perspective has been quite clear. And then the other question through you, Mr. Chairman, is on the level of accuracy. Pakistan tried to, talk about accuracy and, the various levels they have at national level to try and address the disasters from the early stages as well as after. But I'm now trying to refer to how advanced the technologies have gone. Because at the end of the day, we are dealing with a situation that has already happened. Has the technology been far advanced to warn us of something coming, to the extent that at least we will have done something, or otherwise it is firefighting? So I just want to hear comments on the level of the technology's advancement in terms of providing the early warning. The last comment I may want to hear from you, Chairman, and the panelists is there's been some kind of challenges when you try to relocate the people. Some people actually are reluctant to leave. They refuse to leave their places when it's very clear that this is now danger zone. I don't know, it might border on publicity, the awareness, for people to be fully informed that when an early warning sign or a siren blows, you have to leave. Because there are people who are refusing actually to leave their places when in actual fact danger is with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any reaction? Yes, please. Can you come on the table next to one microphone?
Thank you very much, Masom Potogwani from Botswana. I'm interested in finding out the level of hazard mapping, because I think what I am hearing is almost an interchangeable use of hazard and disaster, where disaster, in my view, is when people come into an encounter with a hazard. An earthquake could occur anywhere where there are no people, there is no disaster. And I think that the disaster mapping helps to isolate areas where there is high rate of vulnerability, which could be priority areas of concern, and could be a very useful element of preparedness in order to reduce the amount of disaster. And IT could help a lot in the disaster mapping to isolate these priority areas. So do we have, how much hazard mapping do we have? Thank you.
Very good, thank you very much. The good thing for the moderator is that I'm not the one answering to the question. I will Okay, Your Excellency, you wanted to say something?
Just to respond to the first question asked by the distinguished delegate. With regards to the Caribbean region, we do have a regional approach. And there is an organization in the Caribbean called the Caribbean Disaster Management Agency that coordinates a Caribbean response when there are disasters, natural disasters in the Caribbean region. So we do have that sort of collaborative approach in the Caribbean region. In fact, the Caribbean collaborates on quite a lot of issues. It's just that we have not decided yet to have one prime minister. But outside of that, we do collaborate on quite a number of issues, and disaster management is one of them. Having said that, though, I believe that the CTU president made a very instructive intervention when she spoke with regards to information gathering. I believe that that is one of the areas that I think we need to strengthen on, not just in Grenada, but throughout the Caribbean region.
Thank you very much. Any reaction to the question about disaster mapping? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's extremely difficult to answer this, but as far as I know, a lot of aid agencies right now, in coordination with some of the UN agencies, they started to develop or to build rescue centers These rescue centers, basically, they have all the information about sensitive areas around the world where they are susceptible for earthquakes or hurricanes or tsunamis or and so all sorts of things. But what he is adding as hazardous crisis, for example, one which happened in the last one which happened in Japan, or the one which happened in the early 80s, I think, in Russia. I think this is something which is extremely difficult to predict, but I think it's a very good input to the ITU group of having or raising question to the BDT of trying to identify areas where there is chemical hazards or nuclear hazards or whatever hazards which can be mapped to the world map and make it available for the aid agencies or to the countries having access to that information in case of crisis. I wanted to add one thing which is extremely important. I want to add, since I'm taking the floor, to His Excellency Representative from Pakistan. Today, the first issue that we need to start doing is gathering data of how many hospitals in the country, how many beds in every hospital in a country, how many operation room in that hospital, what is the size of rooms that can be turned into operation rooms or into even rooms that can put beds in it, how many schools, and so on and so forth. There are so many things that need to be gathered for emergency communications, and I think a list of those should be done very quickly and fairly quickly as a guideline by the ITU to the rest of the world in order for to help countries at least start gathering information and putting together at least the foundation of what we call the register on when something happens. At least when an aid agency goes to this country, they will not wander around trying to find how many schools they can be turning it into a shelter, how many what is the nearest hospital to this region that they can take the affected people and the severity of their situation to the nearest hospital, and making sure that there are enough beds. We have seen cases where affected people went to hospitals and there were not enough operation rooms or beds, and they've been dying outside. That was unfortunate. So I think gathering data and guidelines to which kind of data we should have is something that can be done fairly quickly by member states helping ITU and putting it open for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency Mr. El Ghanim. Mrs. Bernadette asked for the floor. We are running out of time. This is a debate, then we can continue. So if, with your permission, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Lefis, and after to Honorable Vice Minister of Pakistan, or Minister of Uganda. Then we could stop here for today and try to summarize. Thank you very much. Yes, you have the floor.
Right. I just wanted to highlight the predicament of children, especially in the area of disasters. Often they are out of school for lengthy periods of time. And I have to agree with my colleague here, you need to have the specific information for the particular sector you're dealing with so that you could aid recovery. One of the things, especially with children, you want to bring them into some sense of normalcy, because this is very, very hard on the children. And so that measures must be taken. And a sector-specific approach for recovery there's value to that.
Much. Your Excellency, please.
Thank you. Just quick response to first question made by my colleague. Yes, there are serious challenges to relocate the people, and the people, they don't leave the place where they are living. Very, very serious challenges. But since it is unfortunate that the disasters are now coming in quick succession, one after the other, so people have this realization. So now the situation is quite different as it was about 5 to 10 years back. The people do realize that relocation is better in case of disaster for the children, for the women, and other people as well. Thank you.
Much. The Minister of Uganda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment what our colleague from Zimbabwe raised. Why do people refuse to leave even when they are told that there is likely to be an emergency? It's not an answer, it's just some comments. In many countries, say in Africa, governments find it extremely difficult to effectively cater for people who are in their normal habitat. How does the same government, which has not quite adequately catered for my needs and my environment, tell me to move to some place I do not know how I'm going to live, from a place where I was born, where I have derived my livelihood, to another strange place? So the population, in a way, have a point. They require a lot of information, a lot of persuasion, a lot of reassurance that this time there is going to be coordinated government action that will ensure a new livelihood. And this is not simple to do. Of course, again, people may be in their habitat. They know that they have been there for the last 40 years. Nothing has happened. Perhaps these fellows who are talking of a disaster may be dreamers. Some believe in supernatural powers and go and say, no, no, the Almighty will provide, will protect. So, Mr. Chairman, my comment is that we in the sector need to do much more work to convince people, to enable them to see that after all, they are viable and credible alternative places when they move. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. As I said, we are running out of time. Maybe if I were, I will never try to summarize what we heard here. We have got a lot of information. I will leave to each participant here to summarize for himself or herself what are the takeaway I'm getting from this meeting. So this meeting not be one more meeting. From whatever I heard here, what I'm taking back for action. This will be my summary for all the intervention. Of course, here we heard about disaster. We also have we are invited to have a larger definition of disaster, not only natural. We have also the locust, also man-made disaster. We're going back with that. But the good thing for me is that we are privileged to working in the sector that is not part of the problem, but always part of the solution, including through the new technologies such as the cloud computing. Also, we heard, in this discussion, we raised, of course, the issue of international coordination at a regional level, international level. When we go out for here, what do we do to improve that? Repository of information, what do we do? Preparedness, exercising, and something we don't have enough time to talk about, what happened after the disaster? The life of those who were lucky enough to be alive. How do we cater for them? Those are all issues we could not talk about here. As I said, I would like all of us to have our own takeaway from this session and takeaway for action. On this note, I would like to thank the panelists, the participant, and I would like us to complete this session by two special things. First, giving a very big round of applause to the panelists and to the ministers. Secondly, at the beginning of this meeting, we observe 1 minute of silence to all those who lost their life. Now, let's stand and take hand, raise hand, please. Yes, okay. And let's raise hand for hope for those who are still in life or have been impacted by the disaster. Thank you very much.